Hey there, and welcome back, or maybe you're here for the first time. I'm glad you're here. Today I'm sitting with Sebastien, talking about his journey in this work. If this podcast is meaningful or valuable to you in any way, it would mean a lot if you share it, leave a comment, or subscribe. It really helps me keep building this space. Okay, let's dive in. Hey, Sebastien.
Hey, Laura.
Thank you so much for being here. We have known each other for quite a while now. You've been joining my first ever weekend that I held as well. And lately, you've also been joining the Liberation Journey, assisting. So being part of the team, but also joining really the program and diving in yourself.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that the first weekend I joined was your first weekend as well.
Yeah. And I remember you as someone who was there with a lot of curiosity, full on trying things out, and also being there with some type of meta perspective and coming back to me with notes and your observations around not only what we did in the weekend and how it moved you in different ways, but also what you noticed about facilitation and the structure and the practicalities. So it seemed right away like you were very curious and interested in all the layers of being in this field.
Yeah, like back then in the beginning, I had this mindset of getting the most out of it, like getting as much out of it as I wanted to. This could also have been the time that I was training as a coach myself. So that explains the meta perspective and my interest in that as well. I think not really knowing what to expect out of it or what was going to happen. I also remember all the notes, the extensive writing I did after every weekend, after every workshop. I just wrote down everything. And years later, when I read them, it's like reading these notes from a different person almost. Like my perspective was so different then. And it makes me laugh sometimes. Like, what was I thinking? What was I feeling or not feeling? What was I avoiding?
Mm.
Yeah, I remember that with a fondness also.
Could you speak into the reason why you started going to these type of workshops, I would say, within the field of conscious relating, intimacy, sexuality work?
The whole story. Really, when I started out, the first ever weekend or event I did was a Tantra weekend for couples. And I started doing that with the idea of, oh, this is going to be sexy and it's going to be exciting and it's going to help us as a couple. We had a bit of a dead bedroom situation then, so there wasn't a lot of intimacy. We had become, it was more of a friendship than a real intimate relationship. And I think I wanted to fix it. And back then, when I saw Tantra, I thought it was about sex and playing. But in that weekend, I had a very different experience when it turned out to be like going inward and looking in the mirror, looking at yourself. I struggled. It wasn't the sexy, exciting time that I envisioned. I really struggled in the weekend and also with my partner. By the end of the weekend, when we were in the closing circle, we had to share how we felt. And while I heard the others share, I felt so good and I didn't know what it was. And when it was my turn to share, I said, I don't know what I'm feeling right now, but I want to feel like this much more often, like all the time. And it took me several weeks after the retreat to realize that I just felt safe and I'd forgotten how that felt. I hadn't felt safe in probably 30 years before that. And I found a therapist and she helped me out a lot. And also throughout all the weekends and the workshops that followed after that, she was kind of like my feedback person and talked me through all those things. And I'm saying talked right now, but that's not actually true, because after my first session, she told me that I want to take you on as a client, but we're not going to talk because you're more intelligent than me and you talk faster than me and your words are just keeping me at a distance. So if you want to come here, we're going to help you feel, to teach you how to feel again. And then I also realized that I had learned not to feel. I remember this practice where I had to like feel my own hands. And you probably know it. I think it's called waking the hands. You just feel the hands and you feel like simple things like a pencil or something. And I didn't feel anything. It's like I was completely numb. And that's how I got started, with the harsh realization that I hadn't felt safe in a long time. And because it felt so good, I felt driven to fix that, to like land in my own body again and to be able to feel the most basic thing that my system craved, which was safety. And then later on, like in the months after that, when I was in these safer spaces where I could feel safe, and I looked at the facilitator, and I remember this very moment where I looked at the facilitator and I had this thing like, I want what you have. I want to be able to do what you are doing. And that got me started, like, as in my own trajectory as studying to become a therapist and do group work myself. And it's really people like you and some others that inspired me to do that. And it's where I am at now. I just like facilitate a workshop yesterday, and I'm that person now, the person I wanted to become. And I can feel safe now in pretty much any situation. And it took years of work to get there.
You spoke into the assumption before you tried out the first weekend that Tantra was going to be fun and sexy time. Did you stumble onto more assumptions or judgments as you took your first steps into this workshop world? Not only workshops, also the therapy you did, all of it, the personal development journey.
Yeah, I remember that when I got started, when I was in these spaces, I put the facilitators on some sort of pedestal where I thought they had all the knowledge, and they all had all their shit together. And I wanted to learn from them. But as I went along, I discovered that it wasn't like that at all. And that these people also had their issues and didn't have the perfect relationship with themselves or with a partner. And they also struggled. And it taught me that I could be vulnerable there too. I wasn't striving for a perfect balance or a perfect life, but more for an honest life, especially to myself, not making up stories that things should be perfect.
I love how you're phrasing that. And I just want to go back to, you said that you can be vulnerable there too. You mean in that role?
Both in my role and also just in life. Before I started all this, my partner had a burnout, and I remember being and also saying a lot like to myself, like, I'm the rock now. I have to be the rock. I have to be strong. If I fall or stumble right now, then everything just like will go to shit. And I told myself that for a very long time, that I needed to be strong. I needed to be able to stand up, to be a rock. And in part, that comes from way before, because when I was younger, my mom also had like really deep struggles, and I couldn't be there for her because I was too young, and I felt guilty about that for a very, very long time. And I sort of like, when my partner was in that space, I sort of felt like this is my chance to make up for that. I have been able to make up for it even though I shouldn't. But that thing about being the rock, about being strong, about having no faults and no cracks, it also stuck with me. And I was able to shed that by seeing vulnerability in others and learning that, okay, it's okay not to be okay.
It's not always so fun to be a rock or to
No,
relate with a rock.
it's a drag.
They're gray and hard and yeah. And my assumption here is when you're shedding that and you're allowing more of the vulnerability, you still feel the strength too. Would you say so?
I actually feel much stronger right now than back then. Because back then I was just pretending. I was just telling myself stories. And to be able to be with the vulnerability requires much more strength and feels much more powerful than just acting to be strong or pretending to be, just so that others would be able to depend on you or something like that.
I've heard you speak into two clear chapters so far. First is like, I would love to fix my relational and sex life. Then there was, wow, I actually want to feel more. And for that, I'm building a sense of safety inside of myself now for the first time in a very long time. And then I heard you speak into what you shared just now of the shedding of the rock and actually accessing a much deeper source of strength that is rooted in vulnerability. Would you say there are more clear chapters for you?
Yes, I would. I think where at first I like I strove for safety. The safety allowed me to be more vulnerable. And it was when I started to look for connection, being able to feel safe, being able to be vulnerable, facilitated connection like in a very natural, easier way. It felt much more authentic, less fake, less forced. And for a long time, I built these connections and I searched for it, I longed for it, and I searched for it in others most of the time. And then in another chapter, you could call it, I discovered that what I really longed for was connection with myself. And I think in one part of the extensive notes I sent you after some weekend, I don't think it was the first. It was the second or the third, I think. I wrote something about falling in love with myself for the first time and finding acceptance there. And that's when I really started feeling connection and really value it when it came from me. And then during this summer, during the last year, when I assisted in the liberation journey, in the full journey, I discovered that I wasn't looking for safety or connection, but it was freedom. And it's coincidental because the first weekend I ever did with you was called Liberation into Bliss. And liberation is something that leads to freedom. And the chapter I'm in now is where I'm discovering just the freedom of being me and being all of me. And also like the parts that I didn't like much, the shadow parts, the parts I feared that others would reject me for. And being able to exhibit those, being able to share those and just like play with them and feel accepted in it. And even I've had people celebrate me for those parts that I never dare to show or have anyone see. And that's what actual freedom feels like to me. That's a chapter I'm in now, and it feels like it's been the point of this entire thing, this entire journey of the past 5 years was actually feeling free.
Mm. Yeah. So obviously, I am very curious about those parts that you said you hadn't really shown or shared before. And that in this journey you actually felt accepted for them or in them. Are you willing to reveal some of it?
Just need to think for a while. I'm gonna word this. Something that comes up right now is like you're thinking like long. So you're really able to share them and put them out there. It's about the perpetrator parts, really. The part of me that wants to hurt. What's underneath there? Why that is. It's about the part of me that's judgmental about what other people do, about what I do. My inner chaos that I've always hidden from other people. In my quest for safety, I also somewhere decided that I wanted to be this really safe person for others.
Mm.
And that happened very naturally, very silently. It's kind of snuck into my personality. And that's something that became very clear during the journey as well. And something that was reflected to me several times. That the safe version of me, the very safe Sebastien, the facilitator me, the friend, was a construct. And it suppressed my playfulness and my sometimes very out of the box ideas, weirdness. I've grown to accept just being weird and also love it because it makes me unordinary, and that's a good thing. I don't know if you know it, but there's this quote from Brené Brown that says, the opposite of belonging is fitting in. And I've tried to fit in for a very long time. I've learned that I don't need to do that. I can be weird and I can have these thoughts that don't feel okay and just share them anyway and bring my darkness and play with the parts that I don't like as much myself.
I think many of us, I'm saying many just because I don't dare to speak for all, but I'm imagining many of us know different versions of trying to fit in. And the particular version that you're speaking into is one that I seem to hear a lot from men in particular. It's something that I hear more often come back of being, I need to be the safe man in the whole Me Too world and all the unsafety around man. How can I be the one that's really trustworthy? And somehow they get stuck in not knowing how to have a relationship with their own chaos, lust, wildness, anger, whatever is there that could potentially be unsafe for other people. There's something around safety and the dangerous parts of us that I have noticed feeling extremely safe and attracted to people that have really met or looked at their dark sides. Maybe have been there in earlier chapters of their life or have just been really doing journeys like you've been doing and I've been doing, where we get in touch with the part of us that can be extremely angry and destructive, where we get in touch with the part of us that could kill if we feel it's really needed. The people that have acknowledged that in the core we all have that inside of us because we're animals and we have these survival strategies. Like the ones that have a relationship to that and choose to not live from that place, to not make their decisions based on that, those feel so much safer for me than the ones that just have no clue about these parts of themselves and completely ignore that they're there.
I clearly remember the moment where you first told me this, and it hasn't been this long. we were breathing together, and you told me this in a shorter version, and that really landed with me as well. It wasn't during a weekend, or it wasn't. It was just a personal interaction, and it's been on my mind. It stuck with me, and I can't agree more. As long as you're hiding parts about yourself or suppressing them, you can't truly be safe, because there's still the danger in the shadows. And when it's out there, when you've been there and when you've seen and felt all those things, and you've realized that they don't overwhelm you, or and you can be with them and just even look at them lovingly. It's about acceptance, I think.
And it comes back to what you shared about feeling free.
Yeah, because like these things you can't look at, these things you're suppressing, are actually parts about yourself that you're caging. And as long as these cages exist, you can never truly be free.
Mm.
And people see that. People feel that. And now that I'm aware, I can also sense it in others. And there's layers that maybe they don't even see for themselves yet, because everybody has the darkness. Everybody has these cages, and we all think we're the only one with these dark thoughts and these weird thoughts, but we're not. We're not alone in that. We all have them.
You started this journey with the expectation or the hope that you would have fun, sexy moments, that Tantra would mainly bring that to your relationship and your life. And then you shared that it actually brought up other things. You met different layers of yourself that were maybe less comfortable than that. Did you eventually find those sexy moments? And how was that for you? Was it as you thought it would be?
I did, but it wasn't as I thought it would be. And all these layers you speak of were just in the way of that. I clearly remember the first time I found myself in spaces where juiciness and eroticism was welcomed. That when I was in interaction with someone and I started to feel my body respond, and I became turned on, and or felt like I was going to have an erection, that I withdrew, and because I felt like we're in this really conscious space and a safe space, and sexuality and arousal don't belong in these spaces. While I did see others go there, I clearly remember a situation in which we did a sort of desire playground, and someone was having their fantasies met, and it was a man, and he stepped out of it at the end, and he had an erection. He had his underpants still on, but he had an erection, and I felt this huge judgment on that, and thinking, why do you have this, ruin it for all of us? While he was just like, he was doing what I could not. And it took me years to be able to allow that for myself. And it's only been just recently that I've been able to do that and just allow that. And because I thought that when I get aroused and when someone notices I have an erection, I am no longer safe, and they will reject me and they will step away and leave me. While that didn't happen. It feels safe for me to allow that now and not be perceived as unsafe, or like that's all what men want. I see that in a lot of men around surrounding me as well. The same sensations, the sensitivity, and the being scared of expressing that part of you, which has also become a shadow part for many men. Being able to express that has contributed a lot to being able to feel free also in those spaces. And in my own relationship, being able to express what I want what I really want, and also have some parts that my partner doesn't want, and be okay with that, and not take it personal, and not see it as a rejection, and just see it as this is something she does not like, and I like, and that's fine.
As you say, I have a lot of clients that can relate to this. I hear this often. And also when I'm on my juicy genitals days, for example, where we really go into the relationship to our genitals in particular, vulva owners really have a different experience with arousal and showing arousal than penis owners. You can't hide it. You can't control it. It's just there. And I definitely also come from a place where, yeah, when there's a desire, we need to do something with it. When there's an erection, well, now there's an expectation. And so it did become something that felt unsafe in a way. And so a lot of people can come to these type of sex positive play spaces with the idea that, oh, now I'm going to have a foursome and I'm going to do wild things. And that is totally possible. And maybe they're gonna. And often they're meeting layers of themselves in that, especially if things happen sober and we've been slowing down and you've been invited to feel yourself. And so I've definitely had participants that afterwards are just celebrating. I was there and I was able to relax in my body, relax in my pelvic floor, and allow arousal. I didn't do anything with it, but I was just there. I could allow it. And I feel so intensely joyful when I hear something like that.
Yeah. I feel warm and fuzzy even hearing you say it right now, because it rings so much truth. I remember going to these spaces with a lot of longings and expectations and wanting to do this and that and hoping for this and that, and coming back with a lot of disappointment for not being able to allow myself this and that I really wanted. And these days, when I enter these spaces, I just go and nothing needs to happen. And I can just sit there and like be there. And the funny thing is, when I started going to these spaces with that intention, all those things I wanted to happen actually just happen, like by themselves. I feel like I'm no longer on this hunt for what I want, but I'm open for what I want now, and they just happen. People come to me, or they just organically show up, and that's so much more relaxed.
I'm nodding and smiling. I want to emphasize that there's only beauty in those fantasies, in these desires that also move you towards new things and move you towards trying out things that maybe are also a little bit edgy for you. So good, and there's a journey in how we relate to our desires often. And anyone who is curious to this particular subject, I also have an episode on this one. Play parties, a kitchen table talk with my sister, where we go into all the nits and grids on, how can it be to be in that kind of space, and also some personal stories there.
It's one of my favorite episodes.
In one of your shares, you've been referring to your takeaways from the journey and how you expected it somehow to be different as an assistant. There was some level of surprise. And I wanted to ask you about this because, everybody who's facilitating workshops or events like this, they have their own system of, how they get support and maybe assistance. And for some people, they will stay on the sidelines and not go into the work and really hold space, so to speak. I know I prefer to have assistants that support me in the breaks and before and after, but are fully in the journey and in the workshops themselves, bringing themselves. And I'm wondering how that has been for you and how, has that been different for you than you expected?
I learned a lot about assisting and also facilitating during the journey, in the sense that I've assisted with quite a few people before, and each have their own style. And I have loved assisting for you because I was able to bring in myself. And I remember during the first weekend, I still also had this thing about I have to be safe. I have to be there for people. I need an overview. I have to care, really. And I think you told me that several times, that you don't have to care for people. You have to let them care for themselves. And how I see the assistant role right now is to be the permission, like to show people, like, you can be just as vulnerable as I am now. You can be just as chaotic. You can be sad. You can be happy. You can do all these things. And just like, I wanted to say be an example, but it's not right. That permission seems like a much better word. And people are able to take care of themselves. And someone might need a little support here and there, but just being there, being present, being yourself is so much more important for people to see and feel that. And I remember during the first weekend that I had this constant shifting about how much of me is like holding space for others and how much of me is actually present in the workshop and in the work itself. And I struggled with it during the first weekend. And then in the second weekend, I was able to just let all of that go and show up as me. And there's also something therein, like being free to just be me and not be the safe assistant who is there for you all the time and will take care of you if you're having trouble and will get you tea and will do this and that. And just like, it's enough to just be there and just be myself.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize that, of course, there are other people that would want an assistant to be in another role than what I'm requesting, right? And this setup is sometimes confusing for some participants, where I'm the one reminding the group, if you're sitting with anything in a break right now, reach out to someone else from the group, or maybe one of the assistants. But there are definitely some people that feel more comfortable being in a space where the assistants are the ones who are more in a role of having it together and being really available anytime they're when they're in the space. So I just also want to name that either are possible. This is just what I'm really preferring. I feel really happy hearing you coming to this place of I can really just be me, and this is a way of adding to the space, adding to the group, being supportive and giving permission.
Yeah, coincidentally, I had a conversation about this just like yesterday, when there was someone who asked me to assist in a new project of hers, and she asked me actually to space hold, not to assist. And I told her about exactly this, about my views and how they've shifted on being an assistant and holding space, and explained that like, I see it this way now, and if we can find a middle in between there, I will happily assist in your project. But I'm not going to be the lifeguard that sits aside and is watching and is vigilant and is just ready to take care of anyone who stumbles, because that doesn't resonate anymore for me. And if you want that, then you will have to find someone else, and I'm completely fine with that.
Okay, so you've shifted your perspective.
Yeah, it changed a lot actually. Yeah.
And I have this Thursday also the meeting with the assistants of the next liberation journey. And so then I also have this conversation of, okay, when someone is crying in a space, can we not assume that they need support and something is wrong? Fixing is needed. We need to go to them. If we feel genuinely an impulse, or maybe for our own sake, we want to feel reassured, go ahead. But I don't like if someone is going there and asking, hey, what do you need? That's already an assumption. I like to be curious about how is it to be you right now?
I've discovered for myself that when we see someone who's sad and who's crying, that and we go to that person, that we don't really we're not really helping them. For me, it came from a place that I couldn't bear to have this person cry, and I wanted to fix it so that I wouldn't have to feel the same sadness, because I couldn't carry the sadness inside myself. And also just yesterday, there was someone in my workshop who hadn't been touched for a very long time. And in the final practice where she was able to ask for the touch that she wanted to, she like burst out crying, and it was so beautiful to see. And also for myself, that I could just sit aside against the wall because I was observing and just be with that and not look at it as something that needed fixing, but looking at it as something beautiful and natural. And the participants that were with her, they also, it seemingly felt like that because they just sat around her and let it happen. And yeah, it was beautiful.
That's exactly what I meant. Sometimes we want to go up to someone for our own comfort.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that either. It reminds me of being in a touch dynamic when we're playing with the wheel of consent. For people who are not familiar with this is a concept of Betty Martin around different dynamics of touch that are possible. When we talk about the dynamic of giving, serving, and receiving, in the best of worlds, in the best scenario, the one who's receiving has the responsibility to let the other person know how they want to be touched. And so the one who's serving shouldn't be guessing, can just, trust that the other person is really communicating when it's needed. And until then, they're happy with what you're doing. I kept on asking, is this okay? Do you want it this way? And in the beginning, I really had to also accept for myself, I'm asking for me. It's a question that sounds like it is for the other person. It sounds like I really want it to be perfect for the other person. In essence, it's me comforting myself that I'm doing a good job. I wish I didn't need it previously, but I did. And so I went with it. And there's also an honesty in that. And it kind of reminds me a little bit, it has the same vibe of like trusting other people. Can we trust other people with their feelings? Can we trust other people with their boundaries and with their wishes?
That's also a key thing I learned from you specifically in interaction with touch. I also used to ask a lot of questions. Like, can I do this? Do you like this? What do you like? Can I touch your hair? Can I do this? Can I go fast? Can I go slow? And I had this like whole interview to establish safety for me so that I wouldn't cross any boundaries, because I had this huge fear of crossing boundaries. It went along with wanting to be the safe one, where I learned that the much better version is just the one question of, can I trust you to just tell me or stop me if there's something that you do not like? And if I feel that I can trust this person to do that, this gives me all the safety I need without all the questions. And we all have this responsibility to, for one, know around our own boundaries, and to be able to show them, to tell them. And we shouldn't put that responsibility upon someone else, because it isn't. I shouldn't want you to question me and know all about my boundaries. And then, no, I have to know my own, and I have to be able to address them.
And I want to add, as we're kind of going deeper into the subject, I want to add another layer of fine tuning here that feels important for me. And that is that I have been to extremes in a position of not knowing my boundaries or my longings or what I need. And I still have these moments when it's very late, I'm super tired, I've just been facilitating a whole day. It can be so hard for me to say what I need or even feel what I need. And luckily, I've grown to know myself better. And so I can sometimes communicate it upfront to people. And then maybe they feel the capacity and the space in that moment to remind me or to check in with me, even when I'm not. That has been a role of the assistants as well. Is like in a moments where I need checking in and I might forget it, can you please do it? Because I know myself in that now. And that is the same for me in friendships or romantic relationships. In the most beautiful worlds, they know me well enough and they have enough care for me that in the moments where they have the capacity, they're gonna check in with me when they have the sense that I might need something and I'm not aware of it. But it's not their responsibility, it's an act of love. It's an act of giving. And if it doesn't happen or they don't feel the space themselves, it's not something that they did wrong or that I expected from them and now I'm disappointed. And for me, that's the nuance. So all the supportiveness and the care and the acts of love, I'm welcoming them so much in my life. And also in the group spaces that I'm being part of or that I'm co-creating. It's just not something I want to expect. And I would love to help people become aware that it doesn't help them to expect it either from others.
Yeah, that's very well said.
Is there any moment or practice in the journey that you're like, I would love to go back there or do it again? Maybe because you only realized afterwards what was possible there, or maybe because you weren't in full capacity, or maybe because it felt so valuable or so fun that you just want to do it a second time for whatever reason.
Mm. It's a very good question. Something that comes up, but I have actually done it again, was I remember I think it was the second or the third weekend, where we did the circling practice, the forum, where we had to, like, we were all in a circle and we each had our chance to go into the middle and just share what was alive in the moment. And I remember this one session where I shared, and when I went back to my seat and then thought, like, that was really polite and restrained, and someone else was sharing while I was thinking that, and it was much more raw. And I know that during the entire practice where everyone else was sharing, I was like judgmental upon myself and like thinking I I didn't show up the way I wanted to. And I asked them, like, can I redo my share and do it again? And I did it again. And it was much more honest and raw and messy. Just messy is the right word. And it felt so much better. Just like, yeah, be the messy me instead of the sanitized, cleaned up, polite me. I remember this one thing where we were able to do these mini constellations where you could craft a situation, or like the group crafted a situation for you to explore after something you shared in the moment. And the constellation my group crafted for me didn't resonate very well. So I asked for some changes and something else. And I ended up with this one person, a woman I've known for a while. And I asked her, like, I want to touch you, like on your arms and your chest. And I want you to say no and push my hand away. And I will do it again and again and again and just cross your boundaries. And that did so much for me to just be able to go into that and feel what that did to me. And I remember after the practice, it took quite a while to just come down from it again, because it made me feel like a perpetrator, like a bad person. This is one of the shadows I've talked about previously. And that's something I would like to do again. Not to do it better, but just to feel it again.
Mhm.
And see what's different or not. I'm still very grateful for that person who did that for me, because that was really for me.
I recognize the wanting to explore a part of me a few times, and maybe with slightly different angles or nuances. I love doing these type of small constellations, and I do them also with friends privately sometimes in a similar structure. And I noticed that often it's like the same theme coming back for like 2, 3 times, but every time with another layer. I feel a sense of relief in my system just hearing you speak into the one in you that, like, I'm just going to go over your boundaries. Like, I'm hearing your no and I'm doing it anyway. And I keep on going. And I guess it's again the same thing of like, when do I really feel safe? Is it with someone who has never gone there, never felt that part of them and says, I'm not that type of person? Or is it with someone who has even tried it out, but chooses to not act from that when we're in a daily touchy situation, unless we're both saying yes to that and we have fun with it? I've been very often on the other side when I was younger.
No, I just hearing you say that now about having been on the other side of that often, it makes me realize that I have to. I have had my boundaries crossed so many times that I lost track of them. And I remember this time when I started all this during the first weekend with you and others, that I I didn't have any boundaries to speak of. And it might have been just safer for me to not have them, because then they wouldn't be crossed as much. And that's most likely where this fear I have of crossing other people's boundaries comes from. I've learned something new.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful for having met you. You've taught me so much. And I know if you told me before to like not advertise you. And I'm not going to, because I've learned so much about myself from your work. I've also come to see you as a friend. And yeah, I realize I've done the most of the work myself, really. And you've just given me the space.
Thank you. If people really liked your vibe and they're curious about what you're bringing in the world right now with groups, maybe also one-on-one, what is there to explore? Where can they go and sniff around a little bit?
I'm located in Belgium. I host connection circles based on authentic relating practices. And some practices I've just come up on my own. I host low entry, slow, touch based spaces where you can explore and learn what you want and how to ask for it, what you do not want, where your boundaries are, and how to express them. I host these spaces in Dutch mostly because I believe that to truly express yourself authentically, you should also speak your authentic tongue. And you can find me at De Middenweg on Facebook or Instagram.
For people who don't speak Dutch, just to follow along, the Middenweg would be translated as the path in the middle.
Yeah.
Or?
We came up with that name because we believe that we do not believe in extremes. You can't just always be happy or always be sad, and you have to find the way in the middle. You can't just like, I'm never drinking or I'm always drinking. You're just like, I'll have one drink. And it's about balance, really.
Mm.
That's why it's called that way.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking with you.
I really enjoyed it as well. Thank you.
And to you, dear listener, if you're curious to work one-on-one with me, I offer online individual coaching. So just find me online and we can talk about it. Thank you for listening and looking forward to the next one. Bye-bye.